to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This meeting of the Honorable Senate for Friday, September 23, 2022 is called to order. Minister Samud, I recognize you from a seat other than your own. Statements by ministers, announcements, bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, the presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled Special Economic Zones Amendment Act 2022.
A bill shortly entitled the Special Economic Zones Amendment Act 2022 read a first time.
Thank you very much. Public business.
I have to go. Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and make it through all its concluding stages.
Really?
Yes.
So the question is that the standing orders be suspended to Oh, of course. I was well aware of that, Ms. Curtis. I'm very focused. Public business.
Mr. President, it is intended that we will conclude the debate on the Firearms Act this morning and take it through its concluding stages. I also wish to note that Minister Hill's bill is indeed time sensitive, so we expect to take that through its concluding stages. The only request, especially considering the inclement weather, I would make is that persons use their time wisely with intervention so that we don't keep the staff longer than we need to.
Thank you very much. And what I've done is to indicate to the clerk that rather than taking a break at lunchtime, if necessary, we'll just shuffle through Ms. Curtis rather than rising for lunch. Shuffle through meaning do it in a sort of relay stage. Thank you very much. Senator Brown, I believe.
Yes, Mr. President, the leader of government business yesterday indicated our general support for this bill, the firearms opposition business. No, it is forecast in the future. the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulations Act of 2022. I believe this is the first piece of legislation that will bear in its early dispensation that it is going to be done, not enacted by the Queen's most excellent majesty, but by the King. It's interesting that the King of England and King of Jamaica, first legislation in his name is about the Firearms Act. Firearms that are not made in Jamaica, but are imported from abroad in the main, and that have resulted in the deaths of so many of our people. Mr. President, when I listened to Senator Bunting yesterday, it was clear from the statistics he revealed that Jamaica is bleeding badly. A bleeding that we all ought to take note of and do something about. The truth is, Mr. President, murder is happening everywhere, and nobody feels safe, be it on the road, be it at church, be it at school, be it at the workplace. Nobody feels safe. Last Sunday, at a football game in Spring Village in St. Catherine, 3 persons was fatally wounded. 2 female and a male. And it reminds me, Mr. President, that in 1993, I took my 4-year-old son then to a football game in Marvally. And I remember it because the photograph of himself in his Auntie Portia's lap was published in the 3rd weekly edition of the Jamaica Observer, a copy of which I still have. But I could take my 4-year-old son then and felt safe, 93, 30 years after. Donna, Senator Scott Motley, I don't know I can take Xander, my grandson, to another football game and feel safe. So you better watch football on TV. He's 11 months. And I shudder what will happen 3 years from now if we don't cauterize this killing, these killings, the bleeding of our country. So nowhere is safe. People are not able to go to bed with their windows and doors open, and in a significant number be able to wake up and still be alive, Senator Morris. That was a promise made to our people, a promise that has not been fulfilled. And so this legislation is coming against the background of that failed promise. And we sincerely hope on this side that we can move beyond failed promise to effective execution of an anti-crime, anti-murder, anti-illegal guns policy and action. Mr. President, given this fear that grips our society, something has to be done. And I note that recently, Senator Bunting, the country was called to have 12 days of mourning. Mr. President, last year 1,463 Jamaicans were murdered. And if I listen to Senator Samuda, much more than that over cumulative number of years. We have had no mourning nationally for them. And so, Senator Samuda, I wish to propose today that in honor of the victims, in honor of the victims' families, that the government, through King's House, proclaim 12 months, not 12 days, 12 months of mourning for the victims of illegal gun in the main in the country. And I'm making that proposal to the government. 12 months commencing with the appointed day of this legislation. 12 months when we mobilize the political parties, the religious communities, the church, the mosque, the temples. 12 months when we mobilize civil society, the private sector, and I know the private sector has been very generous in recent times. Let's mobilize them and let's call upon their generosity. Let's mobilize the artists, the students, the entire people of Jamaica in a 12-month campaign against illegal guns. Let's focus the nation's attention. Let us, in football parlance, since the recent football killing, let us red card illegal guns. Let us red card illegal guns. So, this campaign of 12 months of mourning should get much more attention than the 12 days of mourning we recently had. I believe this is more relevant than those 12 days. This 12-month, Minister Samuda, should see town hall meetings, meetings in schools, in communities, meetings of the farmers' organization, every month for those 12 months, talking about the evil of illegal firearms, working through as a national solution against illegal guns. Let us do it together. This is not for you, your side, or our side. This is about the nation coming together over a 12-month period of mourning. Mourning in honor of the victims, but going beyond mourning, celebrate, mobilizing for the ending and the destruction of illegal firearms. And in so doing, we will red card illegal guns. Let us be clear. It's a dangerous foul. It's a fatal foul. Let us red card illegal guns. So you will have our support. You'll have our support in fighting against illegal guns. Senator Bunting made that clear yesterday. The other speakers on this side will make it clear. The opposition supports the campaign against illegal guns. I remember Senator Bunting, when he was minister, set a campaign in 2015, get the guns. So we have historically and now been supportive of removing the illegal guns from the society. It is against that background, President, that I want to address this bill and make some comments relative to the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act of 2022. As part of that background, I must mention that in August 2019, fully 3 years ago, Minister Chang said that 200 illegal guns, approximately 200 illegal guns, were coming into the country on a monthly basis. 200. And if we take that 3 years, intelligence, if we take those 3 years, Mr. President, 36 months by 200, that's 7,200 illegal guns that would have come in that 3-year period. Not much was done by the government to arrest those. In February of this year, Mr. President, the Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Michael Onis, indicated that a campaign was being launched entitled Get Every Illegal Gun. That's February. At that time, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Today, I'm appealing to persons who are in possession of illegal weapons to give them up. Give up your illegal weapons using any one of the information channels that are available. We have Crime Stop, that you just need to dial 311. You have the JDF, tip line, or just dial 119. Tell us what you know about the guns," he said. And then the article was editorialized as follows. That's a comment of the Prime Minister, end of quote. This is what was said thereafter. "This is the boldest and most by the government to tackle its crime monster, apart from creating the Zone of Special Operations, ZOZO, since 2017. That year, the government had a similar program that provided a 100 million to get illegal guns and ammunition off the street. At that time, the administration paid 150,000 for a semi-automatic, I suspect, rifle. Jamaica, 100 for shotguns, revolvers for 75,000, and negotiable payment after that. So, in February, the Prime Minister announced a buyback of the guns. How has that program fared, Minister Samula? The country needs to know. I wasn't here part of your speech, so I apologize. But it would be fine. It would be fine. So that's why I'm asking again, so you could repeat it. So I wasn't here, and I did apologize to you for not being here. No, I was at the tribunal. So what I want to be clear, the country could be reminded, what has been the outcome of that most bold effort by this government? How successful was it? And how do we measure success? Because that's an important issue in the battle for victory over the illegal guns and the gunsmen. Will this bill have a different outcome from the Prime Minister initiative of February this year? I think even the media have forgotten that initiative. They need to call it up and ask, what was the outcome? Will this bill before us, Mr. President, have a different outcome? And I ask the question because a former Prime Minister of Jamaica once said that hope is not a strategy. And President, I hope you won't correct me that I am misquoting Mr. Siaga. He said hope is not a strategy. And it strikes me that successive governments, that all we have done about crime is to hope. We hope that some new legislation will fix the problem. So let me go back to 1974. My government was in power then. Michael Manley was Prime Minister. We came with the Suppression of Crime Act. We came with the Suppression of Crime Act. we came with the gun court. And President, you'll recall the gun court was painted red because it dread. We had indefinite detention, not just life sentence, but indefinite detention. Did it result in a reduction in crime, murders, the use of illegal firearms? No. We went further, Member Senator Sinclair. And the Parliament, I know, so I ignore you and I recognize you. The Parliament said then, no jury for gun crime. We were going to have in-camera hearing and still have. And the media couldn't even report on who the witnesses were or what was said therein. Has that resulted in a reduction in crime? The answer must be a resounding no. So this hope for legislation hasn't worked. President, at some time along the road, we went to paper statement. We no longer need a witness to come in certain circumstances to be cross-examined. Somebody could be convicted, Senator Campbell, and the mere paper statement without cross-examination. Statement from John Brown.
Senator Brown, I'm not going to interrupt you again, but that was because people were killing witnesses. That's why it was introduced. See, Mr. Bunting, sit down in front of you here. People were killing witnesses, and because of that, persons were committing the most heinous crimes and getting away with it. That is why that was introduced. So don't make it sound like it is some sort of draconian thing.
President, for each of them, and yes, you did interrupt me, for each of them, we could give an explanation why we did that. Why we did that. The point I'm making...
Well, that one worked.
President...
Because they were killing witnesses. Witnesses were coming to court and going to gun court, and before they leave out of the prisons of the court, people gun them down, shoot them in front of gun court, and kill them on King's House.
Mr. President, with the greatest respect to the office, you are supposed to be the presiding officer.
Presiding officer or not, I'm not going to all sit here and make somebody disparage the judicial system that is trying to keep this country safe. So you could object a little more.
Nobody is disparaging the judicial system,
yes, that's
Mr.
what
President.
he's doing. And talking about the use of paper statement like it is some form of subterfuge.
No, Mr.
That was
President,
introduced because they were murdering witnesses.
You are not supposed to be interfering in the debate like that, Mr. President. You know, it is very disrespectful and unbecoming of the office.
President, you would appear to me to be disingenuous. I spoke about the Parliament making these changes, and you are trying to deflect to the judiciary.
The Parliament never made the changes if the judiciary didn't want it to protect the witnesses.
It is the Parliament that changed the Evidence Act. And you know that. But then again, it suits you to intervene, even though you ought not to be intervening on the floor. So I raise the point that along the way, legislation has been changed to make it easier to convict, to put people away, in the name of reducing crime. But sadly, the crime has increased. Last year, despite all of this, it is 1,463 murders. And I don't blame the judiciary. I want to make it absolutely clear. It is the political directorates across the parties that have advanced these positions in respect to crime fighting. The reality is that it isn't working. We even institute, the Parliament, President, institute a change in the firearm law where you could send somebody to prison for possession of firearm even though you did not find the person in possession of the firearm. No, I want you to conduct yourself with decorum and allow the debate to flow. So I'm saying again, the Parliament went that way. It did not.
Mr. President, I hate to interrupt your soliloquy, but I do think that the learned minister will have the opportunity to deal with these matters in his closing. I know how passionate you are about this, but it is interrupting the process of the debate. And I beg you to allow the senator to continue.
If the Senate, Mr. I do not need any assistance from you, Mr.
I'm taking a separate point of order because there's an incorrect assertion that has been made.
If the Speaker does not wish to invite my intervention, then when dealing with aspects of the implementation of the criminal law system and the judiciary, do not mislead. And you're talking about, you want me to take it up? You're talking about passing law to convict people when the gun is not found. If a person shoots somebody, it is hardly likely that you're going to find the gun or shoot at.
President, on a point of order. President, on a point of order. Can I take the point of order? So the senator in his presentation said that crime increased last year. If we continue to misdiagnose the problem, we will misprescribe the solution. The reality is crime has decreased every year since 2015. There is a category of crime which has increased. So it makes what he said incorrect. And for the purpose of the Hansard, since it will be the basis of school presentations decades to come, it cannot be left to stand as it is statistically incorrect.
It is not a point of order. Continue, please, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. The point I'm making, and I understand the reaction from that side and other sides in this triangle, is that despite these legislative actions, because the judiciary can't act without the legislator making these changes, the reality is that the crime situation, including murder, has not ameliorated. It has gotten worse, Senator Samuda, worse than the 2015 speech about sleeping with your doors open. It has gotten worse since the Prime Minister made that speech. It has gotten worse since the Prime Minister has been in charge of the government. So let the record show that. So clearly, the strategy of hope is not working. But we pass these legislation and we expect that somehow things will change for the better. Hence my call for the 12 months of mourning, the 12 months of mobilizing the nation against illegal weapons, illegal firearms. Let us do something different than just passing legislation and hoping, because Siaga is right, hope is not a strategy. Mr. President, despite the legislature passing the Anti-Gang Act, by us on this side, we were in government, more gangs have exploded in the country. So it's not about just mere passing legislation and think that we can hope for an outcome. We passed quite correctly the anti-scammer set of legislation. But scamming continue. And some people may sing about government scamming. So, legislation by itself doesn't solve our problem. We need to mobilize the entire society from top to bottom, left and right, center and everywhere, in a crusade against the guns. Mr. President, when we pass this legislation, how will we know if it is successful? Are there going to be, if Senator Webby was here, I'd have said, key performance indicators? Will there be KPIs? So we can measure along the road when we come to the review of this legislation, if we have made progress. I sat on the Zozo Review Joint Select Committee. And it was clear, Senator Samud, and you were there, that we had no benchmark to measure progress, to measure success in that committee. So let us learn from that and see if we can at some point, I'm not asking for it in the legislation, but as part of the policy going forward, establish key performance indicator that will tell us if we are making success, if we are stagnant, or we are going back. So I'm calling for the establishment of key performance indicator to tell us if we are going forward. I fear, Mr. President, that without that, and the declaration of an amnesty, for example, and I promise you that I wouldn't go into this, but how will we know if the amnesty is a success? Is there a threshold of guns we want to collect by it, and then we say it's a success? Amnesty doesn't seem to work in this country. First thing, Senator Samuda, is when you issue an amnesty for 3 months or 6 months, everybody wait to the last day and tell you to extend it. Amnesty doesn't work. We saw 2 or 3 amnesty for Road Traffic Act. It doesn't work. And recently I heard another call for amnesty under the Road Traffic Act. So I wish you well with your amnesty, but I don't think it's going to work. And if it works, how do we know if it's a success? President, I am of the view that moving sentencing discretion to the Court of Appeal, rather than allowing the judges at first instance, where there are much more judges than in the Court of Appeal, to take the judicial decision in respect to what the sentencing should be. It shouldn't be clogging up the already clogged Court of Appeal agenda. Trust our judges to make the right decision. So I hope, President, you will say, here is Senator Brown bigging up the judiciary and not disparaging the judiciary. So, I never draw you in before, but I draw you now. You were drawn the first time. You walked voluntarily into it the first time. I'm now pulling you in because you have that good practice of defending the judges. Defend the judges with their discretion. Allow the first instance judges, the judges in the circuit court, in the Supreme Court, to make this decision. Don't need a certificate from them to go to the Court of Appeal and clog up the Court of Appeal agenda, which have many cases that is way behind its schedule, and they will recognize that. So I'm not supportive of the mandatory sentencing approach. I'm not supportive of that. And President, maybe the minister could be guided by the Privy Council recent decision in that Trinidad case dealing with bail. Part of the reason in that case, the Privy Council explained that there could be different circumstances which led to, in that case, murder. And therefore, the judges, and in particular the judges in first instance, and again I'm bigging up the judges, should be allowed to take the decision. So I'm urging you, Minister, to rethink and read that Privy Council case and see the reasoning, because certainly I am persuaded by those reasoning. I wish to make 2 other proposals in closing, and this is my personal proposal. I believe the country needs to be focused and the reduction of crime, reduction of murder. I believe this Parliament has passed all of these legislation, some of them to be reviewed 7 years, some 3 years, that a special select committee of the Parliament should be established to focus on crime reduction. To be able, like the U.S. Intelligence Committee or the U.S. Ways and Means Committee, or our own production, or whatever committee we have, to focus as a Parliament on what can be done